What is up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's reaction video with my mum is
Hi.
Could the US military conquer the UK if it wanted to? I've seen this video before, I know the results, so I won't spoil it, but what do you think?
I definitely think they could, yes.
I mean, we haven't actually done any videos on the US military yet. We spoke about it a little bit, haven't we?
Yeah, I really want to see those.
But I guess some things you've got to take into account. We're on an island, so it's a bit harder. It's not like you're just going across a border, so you've got to be able to get to England. It's a longer trip. But you still reckon the US? Yeah,
from watching the other videos the other day about their military and how much military they have.
Yeah, it told us about how big it was, didn't it?
They could just squash us like a fly.
Yeah, and that's literally just off looking at the military a tiny bit. The video wasn't even about military. Just wait till we get into like the other ones. But yeah,
they could just squat us.
We'll see. We'll see if you're right. Smash that like button if you're enjoying this content, guys. Smash that subscribe button. We'd really appreciate it. The more you guys do that, the more the video gets pushed out, and the more we know you guys want to see it. You ready?
Yep, ready.
Let's get into it. Could the US military conquer UK? Let's see what we got. Hopefully not.
We all know US and
the
UK
need
are
to stay
close
that way.
allies, and that US armed might is far greater than that of UK. But just for argument's sake, and to learn what sort of limitations waging warfare across the ocean implies, this video will explore US invading the United Kingdom. So, with just the airplanes and ships left to count on, is an invasion over the Atlantic viable?
Добро пожаловать в штаб-квартире Бинков.
Welcome to Binkov's Age of Kings. Know that P.O commanded an enemy for free, like aid UK. And now, could US military successfully invade UK if it wanted to? Some rules will apply. US gets no overseas bases, and all other countries are impassable.
Makes sense.
Distance from US to UK mainland is pretty big, especially when reaching London. Before trying to land any troops, the seas must first be clear of British ships, and Royal Air Force must be suppressed. US has a massive advantage when it comes to naval assets. Basically, all of its assets are made for oceans and could operate near UK if needed. While the Americans would need to sail to and from Britain, taking weeks away from their actual presence, US Navy could pretty much do whatever it pleases near the UK. It's interesting to point out that most of US ships do not carry anti-ship missiles. US Navy prefers to use their carriers for such missions. British Royal Navy is to go down a similar route. Their Harpoon missiles are old and set to be retired soon. Not all ships have them.
Oh yeah, this video is in 2019, so they're definitely retired now. Yeah. So it just makes it even worse, I guess, nowadays.
It does make it worse.
A minor part of the British fleet has modern air defense systems. Basically, the sea war would be fought above the sea and under it, but the British lacked anti-ship missiles for its aircraft. Furthermore, British Tornado aircraft ceased to train for the anti-ship missions almost 2 decades ago. Basically, if UK had to try and do air raids against US fleet, it would be down to 2 weapons, laser-guided bombs and short-range tactical missiles.
Don't think that works.
Brimstone in particular might be the weapon of choice. While its warhead is tiny, Brimstone 2 has a decent range. Still, against dozens of potent destroyers designed to deal with many anti-ship missiles at once, it's unlikely UK could do much. British best bet would be their submarines. They're fairly modern. Theoretically, the British could use their ballistic missile subs as attack subs as well, and speed up the entry into service of another astute sub, while keeping one Trafalgar running.
At least we've got something. At least we've got some submarines.
We've got 11.
We've got 11.
We've got 68.
We've got 68, but
and probably better equipped 68 as well.
You see, but it said in that other video that we watched that the US invests so much in their military.
It was billions, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was billions.
I think the stat was, the video will be already out so you guys would have seen it, but I think the stat was something like the 9 next, if you combine the nine next countries spending together, it still doesn't surpass the US, which is mental.
I know, but sensible.
Rummaging for retired sailors to crew it. Still, the British would be far outnumbered. US submarine fleet dwarfs theirs. Given a bit less time on station and British home advantage when it comes to resupply, the balance of power may not be quite 6-1. Still, it's no question the British subs would get hunted down within months. Aerial anti-submarine platforms would also play a large role.
I don't think it'd
take
that long.
And while the British could use all their assets, even just the deployable portion of...
Events, that's 460 to 41.
I know.
It's 10 times. It's over 10 times more.
I know.
US assets would be enough to force the British subs into hiding. Furthermore, US carrier-based air power would make it hard for British anti-sub helicopters to operate. The main force projection would be done by US carriers, naturally. US could choose whether to use more carriers initially and then have less available later on,
but
or to maintain a smaller number.
In the UK's defence, we are a lot smaller. We're just like a little dot, according to America. So where would we store all this?
Exactly.
These ships and submarines if we had them.
If we had them. I suppose on the coast. But
if we have 41 and the US have 46, but they have a bigger area to store it all, so maybe.
But when you look back in history, obviously it wasn't good times in history and it was a lot of greed by the UK. But it is quite mental to think that the tiny island which we're talking about did have massive ship fleets.
I know, yes, I know, and now they don't.
Pretty much the entire world.
I know.
When you think now the US, obviously we're friends and stuff like that, but if anything, if we ever wanted to not be, we'd be screwed. Just think we did rule the US at one point as well.
I know.
It is mental to think.
That is mental to think.
Well, you think now, you don't stand a chance.
No.
Like, how did that happen?
I don't know. But
like, what?
I know.
It is mad.
On constant patrol. To defeat the British Air Force, the former is more likely. US nominally has 11 carriers, but only 9 air wings. It does have an additional support wing, which is a lot bigger. It may be the source of 1 or 2 more combat wings after some months of preparation. But crews aren't the only issue. Lifespan of a carrier necessarily involves lengthy maintenance periods. Important to note is that the deployable period doesn't mean the carrier can actually be on a mission the whole time. Usually 1 or 2 deployments are made during those 18 months. Missions are usually 6 to 8 months long, and several months are needed to prep the carrier and its wing for another mission. Shorter missions might give more deployments in the short term, but in the long term, they would require even more maintenance for every month spent out at sea.
Makes sense.
Because of all that, it's unrealistic US would send out more than 6 carriers at once. After
still, 6 is still a lot.
Similar issues would affect the aviation assault ships. Perhaps 4 to 6 could be deployed at once, after some preparations. Grand total of combat planes US Navy and Marine Corps could muster in a few months long air campaign is thus smaller than the total number of US planes. US might fly in fresh planes to replace ones that got lost. Flying them over the ocean to a carrier would be doable.
In the US, where are all these planes? 360, it must be like a plane car park for the military. It must be like, I just see it as this vast desert area just where all the jets are parked up ready to go.
I assume it's all over. I assume every state has like a base. And
maybe. I could just visualise this massive place full of jets.
No, I imagine that'd be a big target for bombing, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
I guess. But just imagine just a vast desert of planes.
Yeah, I suppose that would be very sensible.
What could the British respond with? Royal Air Force is smaller than even the readily available US planes deployed on carriers. Another huge issue for the British would be their lack of air defenses. Everything they currently have are fairly low altitude systems, meaning the US would be free to bomb them from high up with guided weapons. UK would also suffer the US cruise missile barrage. While the Brits have some such missiles of their own, it's unlikely they would be used against the faraway US bases. Even the subs that could carry them would be better utilized for defense of the homeland. While not all could be launched at once, US could sustain the effort. The British Air Force would be mostly paralyzed on the ground. US has also a much bigger recon platform fleet, especially when it comes to satellites. British lack those, as in the real world they timeshare some US spy satellites. US aircraft would be looking for targets as well. Britain would have no real means of scouting the US bases. US AWACS type planes would be plentiful, while British ones would mostly be trapped on the ground, with runways and highways being mostly inoperative. Thus the Royal Air Force would slowly get destroyed on the ground. When they would be able to get some planes airborne,
so we don't actually stand any chance at all, really, do we?
No, every stat was popped up, we haven't won in any.
I think we've been criticised a lot as well, the UK, for not investing in our military and our, planes and...
Yeah, maybe it is that heavy reliance on America, which, again...
It is, yeah.
Is not always a good thing.
No, we shouldn't really do that. It's not fair really in America for us relying on them, but I'm glad that you're there for us and
definitely.
we are allies. But
like I say, it's a good job we're your best friends.
It is a good job.
Used to engage the Americans, as it's likely US attack waves would be made of close to 100 planes with possibly as many fighters as Britain would muster per each local interception, or more. The best Britain could hope for would be a roughly equal kill ratio in the air. And when the losses on the ground are included over months of a protracted bombing campaign, US would still be left with a sizable force. All this didn't even include the US Air Force. While the scenario requires it to use the bases inside the US, Britain could be reached. At first, bombers would be deploying cruise missiles, but later on they would be likely used for bombing missions.
And all could be reached without having to refuel.
There you go, so they literally just go
That's amazing.
And that's in-air refueling. Have you ever seen in-air refueling?
No, I don't know what in-air refueling is.
In some of the videos we do, there'll be a few clips of it, but that is literally like, so one of these big bombers, like a big a refuel plane will fly up to it in the air, and it literally, a fuel rod goes into it while they're both flying at ridiculous speed, and it fuels it in the air while they're going.
That's unbelievable.
Could be in the middle of the sea, fuel plane comes up, fuels it, fuel plane goes, carries on going, it's got a full tank. It is mad, the accuracy.
That is mad.
We'll see that in some other videos.
But it says they could reach London without even refueling.
Even doing that, yeah. So you have the capability of doing that as well. You got no chance, have you?
No, not at all.
The plane fleet help out as well. With very ample in-flight refueling, the answer is yes. US operates the world's biggest air tanker fleet. The Hercules-based tankers, however, are too small and would use most of the fuel just to get near Britain. Still, the remainder of the fleet has a substantial fuel offload capacity, and tankers could refuel each other. Such ops may sound complex, but compared to what the British did in Falklands War, they're fairly basic. The British used a dozen tankers to refuel themselves repeatedly, keeping the bomber refueled throughout all of the route. While all of the tanker fleet would not be available due to maintenance, the rest could still offload significant fuel loads just outside Britain if needed. With several refuelings per plane, US Air Force could still expect to have around 400 combat planes in action practically every day. The British would really have no chance in the air. Within months, the US would have complete...
Yeah, they'd have 400 every day. We've only got 180.
I know.
So after a day, ours are wiped out.
We are wiped out after a day.
And thus the second phase of the invasion might commence. By that time, British ships would be mostly dead, even if they hugged the shores and just aided in the air defenses. British submarines might hold out a bit longer, if not being used to actively hunt down US ships. But even if British subs managed to kill 2 US vessels for each of their own, final result would be the end of the Royal Navy. So at around 6 months or so into the war, the landings would be mostly unopposed, except for the Royal Army defending the shores. 6 months would be enough for US to assemble pretty much all of their active and reserve assets. In addition to landing ships, US could count on numerous cargo assets of its Sealift Command and Reserve Fleet, in case a port is secured. US Airborne could also help, with the numbers shown with newly trained paratroopers. Getting additional heavier equipment for them, however, would not be likely, given the time limit. US transport plane fleet is pretty big, and should be able to drop all the airborne troops within days. US could be looking at close to 30,000 troops during the first day, and close to 20,000 more the day after. Subsequent days would see fewer and fewer troops being added, and more supplies being brought in. The British would enjoy more soldiers than shown before. The reserve mentioned covers only the soldiers receiving some training periodically.
Okay, so there's 148 from that. But like you say, you could in theory, after 9 months you get 1.1 million, but...
Yeah, but...
Well, I think I'd avoid the conscript if I'm in Jersey, won't I, for attacking the UK, or would I have to go over? I might have to go over.
You might have to go over.
Just hiding in a trench.
Hiding in a trench. Oh, I'm glad we don't do all that.
Yeah, good job with friends.
It is a good job with friends.
Soldiers for whom some heavy equipment is stored. In an event of a total war, Britain would be using those 6 months to mobilize as many soldiers as possible. While they would be equipped with basically just rifles, and while their training would be less than adequate, they would still boost the overall numbers several times. Yet all those soldiers may not be enough, as UK has a problem of geography. Its landmass is just too large. Its coastline is very long, Even when taking just the western part of its coastline into account, the area to be defended is huge. And what about the islands? Perfect for US to take.
That's why, in the Second World War, why Churchill gave up Jersey, because he couldn't protect Jersey.
Couldn't protect it, yeah.
So he gave Jersey to the Germans.
Yeah, which I think I was just about to mention. He's missed Jersey in this video. He's talking about the islands. We're down here. We're there, aren't we?
Yeah, we're there.
But like I say, it was occupied by the Germans.
Churchill didn't even try to defend Jersey.
Just let the Germans come in.
Yeah, just let the Germans come in. Luckily, it all worked out.
Yeah, if people don't know, there's German bunkers all over the islands and stuff like that, which we should really do a video on going around the water.
Yeah, we should,
But yeah, that's all on Jersey, because like I say, he gave them up. So they did miss that out on this video.
Yes.
Revenge themselves at, before launching further landings from them. Most of those areas are sufficiently far away from the mainland that British artillery would not be much of a factor. And what about Northern Ireland? There are just too many places for US to concentrate its assault on. The British would not be able to move their forces around easily and protect those islands or the Northern Ireland. So the islands would fall one by one. Then either Northern Ireland would be taken or part of Great Britain would fall. Hard to traverse overland Scotland would be an obvious choice, though that would also slow down US breakthrough as well later on. Cornwall or Devon are also decent picks, as British defenders lack room to swoop down on the US beachhead from all directions, though such areas would likely be more heavily populated by British military to begin with. Once the US manages to secure ports and airfields and brings in US Army reinforcements, it would be basically game over for the British.
Yeah. It would. You can't protect all the coastline. No. You'd be spread out too thin.
And then look at that difference. You're talking about the helicopters, transport, 3,000 to 203.
Like I said before we started, it'd be like squatted a fly, wouldn't it?
Literally. It takes a little bit longer, but you get there.
Not much longer.
Its helicopter force on the areas it has taken, which is considerable. While the British have a fleet of their own to help quickly distribute its forces where needed, their numbers are small. Both sides would of course be losing many helicopters, US to British low-level air defenses and British to US fighter cover, which would continuously be flying over the important areas. The British would have only a small part of shown inventory of heavy weapons present at any one point the US attacks. While US would also not be disembarking thousands of its Abrams tanks or 10,000 of other heavy combat vehicles, the overwhelming fire support coming from various directions would more than make up for it.
Yeah.
Fire support from the ships may come in form of MLR units firing from the ships rather than actual gun barrage. US ships still lack long-range gun rounds. Attack helicopters are another way of concentrating force in one area.
Completely different numbers.
But again, the British are far outmatched, even if just half of US numbers are present. The issue for the Americans would be time. As the scenario asks what can be achieved within 1 year, US would be under pressure to progress from their multiple beachheads. Northern Ireland is likely to fall within the 1 year time limit, but only minor parts of the Great Britain would be overrun by the Americans during the same time period. The British would put up a hell of a fight.
Yeah, we'll try our best.
Ground troop loss ratio would favour the British.
Yeah, I think we would, but...
Well, you got to, I guess, haven't you? But it's not going to... It's inevitable, isn't it?
It is inevitable,
British somewhat. But when Air Force and Navy losses are added in, where Britain would suffer more heavily, the US would come out fine.
Yeah.
With added large chunks of conquered territory, the US could call itself a victor. Big thanks goes to all...
Not surprised.
No surprise. Well, all but it's just, it's unbelievable how much, weapons and helicopters and, planes
like I say, a bit
and
more of an
boats
insight into how much they have, comparing it to the UK, which obviously we're not the biggest powerhouse anymore, nowhere near.
No,
but still,
we're not.
It's a big difference.
But I still think it's good what the US are doing and they invest in the military and all that.
Definitely.
Yeah, weaponry, I do. Yeah.
And like I say, we are allies, so from our point of view, we're just piggybacking off it.
Yes, thank you.
We will get into some more where it actually goes into detail about how deadly and how impressive some of these things, which cost billions of pounds are, but that'll be in the future. Enjoy that?
I did enjoy that.
And we are friends, so that's the main important thing. So that will hopefully never happen.
Great friends.
Smash that button, guys.
We love America.
Subscribe button, and what should you do?
Have a great day.
And we'll see you guys into the next one. Peace.